You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy?
I'm a human being, god damn it! My life has value! It's time to ask yourself what you believe.
Mass murder, torture, perjury, embezzlement, fraud, deception, treason. These are just a few of your many crimes against humanity. You will not win this war, for you are fighting the very essence of humanity.
Hi, welcome to Truth or Talk. I am April Bowden.
And I'm Virstyne Henry.
Please visit our website at truthertalk.com where you can find our archive shows, our essays, and our store where we're still selling Conspiracy Realist t-shirts. We haven't mentioned that in a while, but we still have them. So you guys can buy them if you like them, which I think it's a nice design that Virstyne made.
Based on Liam Sheff's, our friend Liam Sheff's idea, or not idea, but just kind of his catchphrase. Right.
Yeah, he used to call himself, I don't know if he still does, but he used to call himself back in the day the Conspiracy Realist, and he wrote a book called Official Stories, which we also have available at our store. You guys can check out our website. We would appreciate that, and find us on Facebook and everything if you like what you hear today. So, yeah, we're talking to Clint Richardson today.
Yeah.
And that'll be good. That's always a good show. Clint always gives good radio.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people we do. I feel like I say lately I've been saying the same thing. I'm like, yeah, they're a wealth of information. I love having them on.
Right.
But it's true. Like, I'm not lying.
No, I know.
Right. I think we talked about this before. The huge reason that April and I really do this show is because we learn so much. And we just, we think that this is incredible information that needs to be shared with other people. It can be very empowering, but at the same time, we really started this for ourselves and to further our research and our curiosity. What better way to become more educated than to, actually talk to some of the people and ask them in-depth questions about the work that we read of theirs, Yeah,
absolutely. And we would, before we started the show, we would have these long conversations when Virstyne was living in Taiwan, and we'd be sharing off information, and then we decided, let's just put that to radio, and so that's how Truth or Talk was born. We just took what we were already doing and decided to start recording it. But, and then Clint's just obviously somebody who does a lot of work and a lot of research and has gone down multiple areas of things that are of interest to us, including vaccines and including the straw man kind of argument, the natural law, and things like that. So that's what we're going to be talking to him about today, because we wanted to bring him in because we've got all these things, these vaccine mandates in this law, and we kind of wanted to look at that stuff and how that is applicable from a natural law perspective. Like, how do you... I guess we're looking for a solution. We want to know how to get out of it. How do people get out from under the thumb of the government that seems to be suppressing them? How do you, so-called break the law? These laws that you didn't really consent to, but what is that all about? So I'm sure he'll have plenty to say on the matter.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's like a computer brain. That's a compliment, though, Clint. You can mess with Clint a little bit like that, for sure.
Yeah. Clint dog. But he's, I mean, he is, because, like, if you read his articles on his page, sometimes you're like, damn, that's a lot of information there that you put into one article. His last article, the one he wrote about, what was that called? The Archons article. I don't know if you guys can check out stuff at Reality Blogger. It took me like 3 days to get through that thing. I was like, oh, wow. I mean, it was...
but you did it, girl. You did it.
I managed. I made it through. I was like, dude, why didn't you just write a book, I mean, you could have just taken this information, and I'm sure that even though it's such a long piece, and he he could have probably even expanded even more. And then next thing you know, you have a book, dude. You know, a few hundred pages, and bam, all on this one subject. But he tied all these other subjects together. It was just kind of like, wow, I don't even know how.
Has he written a book?
I think he's writing a book, but he said that it's not going to be available for a while. Okay. Because he's also. Yeah. I would buy it as well, and I I think he's doing a film right now too. Oh, okay. So yeah, he's works on. Well. Yeah. He does, right. He has some documentaries out there. He's got a documentary on Common Core, and he's got a documentary on vaccines, and so I've seen that one, and I saw most of the one, I think, on Common Core too. So I always feel bad that I don't get around to watching people's documentaries and they're listening to their shows and stuff, because I'm just more of a reader. I don't know why. I retain information better that way. Plus, I just don't retain it as well. Plus, I don't like watching a movie and then having to be interrupted. And because I have small kids, I'm always being interrupted. But when I read, I can be interrupted and go back to it and not forget the information. So I just think it's just the way my brain works. I'm just not as hot.
I feel like I'm the opposite. I still do a lot of reading, but I feel like I'm the opposite. It's easier for me to retain audio like that. That's how I learn, you know. Well, I'm a musician, so.
Yeah, right. It does make sense, because for years I would struggle with things like that, like learning languages or learning instruments and things. But I can read and I can retain the information pretty well through reading. But and I just like it. I can go through that. I just get it, and I'll remember it faster. You know, if I write things down, I remember them better. People can tell me their name, and I'll forget like their name mid conversation, and I'll have to, before they're done with their sentence, I'll have to go.
What's your name?
What's your name again? You know, and it's embarrassing. I'm like, oh my god. But if I write it down, I'll remember it. And I don't even have to go back and look at it. It's just the act of writing it down that causes me to remember.
You know, you're an kinesthetic learner, though. You know.
Yeah.
I want to have somebody on to talk about the multiple intelligences, because I think that's another. Speaking of, you know, just on the subject of fallacies and how we're constantly being lied to, that's another thing in education. I feel like that's not being really showcased like it should. The fact that people have different intelligences and different ways of absorbing information and different ways of learning. And if people knew this, it would really empower them. And when I've gotten the chance, to talk to some of the kids that I've taught, but I'm so overwhelmed with the curriculum that they want me to shove down their throats. Whenever I can find time to bring in extra stuff, I do. And when I've told the kids about it, they're just like, they love it. They love it. And I can see that, you know, it gets the wheels turning and it increases their self-esteem. Because, they have this idea that you're kind of born either smart or you're not smart, you know, or these other talents or interests that they have, they don't think of them as intelligences, you know, like music and art and sports, and, you know, they're not thought of as intelligence. It's basically just math and like English. Really, that's for us. I mean, we have some science, but...
That would be a really interesting show to do. I'd like to do that as well, because I think you're right. I am very kinesthetic when it comes to learning, and secondary would be visual. So I'm kinesthetic, and then second, I'm visual. And then lastly, I would be auditory. So, and I think my son is that way too. And my son Avery is he kind of just learns. He's kind of good at all of it. I'm not trying to brag. It's just true. It's like he can have a lecture. He can listen to something that's being read out loud or watch a movie, and he'll kind of just retain it all. It's sort of interesting. But myself, I'm not like that at all. And my son Aiden has certainly, throughout the years in school, they've always been pushing this. Like they've somehow come up with the idea that children with autism are visual learners, and that visual is their primary. And I think it has to do with Temple Grandin. Temple Grandin being the famous autistic person who created the squeeze machine. Squeeze machines are good. They do help the kids compress their bodies, and that gives them that proprioceptive input. But it's which are the proprioceptive is a sense that people don't think of. They think of the five senses, but there's another sense called the proprioception, and then there's another one called the vestibular. Vestibular comes from the inner ear.
Oh, wait, hold on, back up. You need to explain this.
Okay,
I'm sorry, Jay, cut you off. Explain it, because
No,
that's
no.
what I'm talking about.
Okay, so there's so we all know our five senses. So we have touch, smell, feel, sound, and vision. Sight.
No, taste.
And taste.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, okay. So sorry. Yeah. So taste. I must have said one of them twice.
Yeah,
but anyway,
hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, and touching. There we go.
right. So those are the five. So then the other ones that are sensory in nature that that people don't necessarily know about are vestibular, which is a sense that resonates in the inner ear canal. So this has to do with your balance. And this has to do with your ability to, your balance, your ability to.
Sometimes your equilibrium.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It has
you get
to.
an ear infection, so they say you shouldn't drive, right? Because it emits.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and some of these, some drugs and things like that will interfere with your vestibular system, interfere with your equilibrium. And then there's proprioception. Proprioception is your it's the sensation that you get between your joints. So if you're like going to take your fingers and wrap it around your wrist right now, it gives you a certain feeling. You can squeeze on that, and you'll feel it'll give you a sensation throughout your body or through certain parts of your body. And you can do this with your elbows and things like that. When you compress them together, it can often you can feel it in other parts of your body. So this is another sense that's called proprioception. And a lot of times with kids with autism, their sensory systems have all been askewed. So they might have perfect vision in the sense that they can identify objects, so it's 20/20, but it's weird. Their vision, their perception is off. So that's part of the sensory output. And then they might be sensory seeking. They might look like they're very hyperactive. This tends to be an issue with the proprioception. Their body is seeking proprioceptive input. So that they may have be undersensitive in that particular area. So that's where Temple Grandin invented this thing called the squeeze machine that used to be used for cows. And she saw how it soothed cows when cows were going into the slaughter. They would use these machines to squeeze their bodies so that they felt safe, and they didn't, they were kind of like swaddled like a baby and comforted. And so she thought, well, if we give, people with autism have this problem too. They feel fearful and they don't know where their bodies are in space and time. So maybe this thing would be soothing, and it is. They put children go through these things. They're called squeeze machines, and they might sound worse than they actually are. But it's basically just compressing your joints, your proprioception. And it does release this tension that a lot of these kids feel, and they start to become more aware of their bodies in space and time. But you can also just do this with your own hands. You can just squeeze your child. You wrap your arms around your child and give them a hug. That will release, not only it will release the tension that they feel from not having
endorphins,
but it will release oxytocin, which is the love hormone. And so I think that's different than endorphins. But anyway, the point is that what I was getting at was that Temple Grandin was a visual learner, and she wrote this book about how she could see things in pictures. She could see things in pictures that she couldn't see in the real world because things just moved too fast, and she could just see the still frame, and she understood things better that way. So for that reason, most schools and most classes and most everything that caters to autistic children is heavily visually based. So they'll put up a lot of pictures, and they want kids to be reading and seeing, they'll have to see, like, pictures of swings, and then that'll help them put together, what a swing is, and, they won't necessarily be able to identify that out in the world or be able to communicate that they want to go on the swing, so pictures might help them identify that. But an autistic person is the same as any other person, so they're going to have multiple intelligences. And so I don't know why they got so stuck on this one intelligence, that Temple Grandin had, and made it out to be like that's what everybody possesses, because that's where they get stuck.
Well, they do. Well, a lot of stuff. They do that with I guess concerning autistic people. They just put them in a box, because they're people. They have personalities just like anybody else too. And that's where, like we were talking, I think off where we were talking about like Asperger's, and some people, I guess Asperger's people are known for being like, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm saying antisocial, maybe, or not able to relate to people. But within that, there's still, I've met Asperger's people who have learned manners and who are nice. And there are people that have Asperger's and they're assholes. They're just assholes. And not because, but some people just be like, they want to say, oh, well, they just have Asperger's. Well, forgive them. No, they're a fucking asshole. They're mean. They can be mean, because they're people. But I think, I don't know, from my observation, they'll just pick one autistic person that's, kind of, mainstream, and they'll take those characteristics and then they'll just label all autistic people like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just they'll stereotype, or they do it for their own laziness or whatever. And I always saw in the school system that a lot of the visual stuff was through the teacher's own laziness, and sometimes it helps them remember things. Like they need a visual cue, the teacher does, and so that'll kind of help them remember, like, oh, this is what I need to do with the child. So they'll put up these things of visual schedules and things like that. And I don't have necessarily a problem with writing schedules and things like that, because it does help. I do this for myself sometimes when I'm trying to manage my time, just so that I can get everything I need to get done in a day. But the idea that every child is going to have, a visual intelligence, Aiden's is very kinesthetic, and I think when a child seeks a lot of proprioceptive input, and that's soothing and that's calming for them, you need to look at kinesthetics as far as if they are a kinesthetic learner, because if it's calming to them to move and to use their bodies to manipulate things, then that might actually be a good way to teach them, because moving their body is going to actually calm them, and so they're going to be more apt to learning. And so, and so it took us, a long time to get out of that. I used to always tell the teachers, because they always tried to teach them visual communication, like using these things called PECs, or picture exchange communication. And I hated PECs. It was like drove me up the wall, because I'm going, he doesn't like to use these. Isn't
that the ones that show like a kid's face and it says happy and it's like smiling sad, like that?
Well, that's Yeah. They use those for everything, though, because those are like the ones they use to help the child describe their emotions, but they'll use them for other forms of communication. Like, you want your sandwich, they'll show a picture of your sandwich, and then you take the picture of the sandwich and you hand it over to a person. And so that's one way you can use that to communicate. And so you can use it for whatever, that's mostly what they use it for, is communication, or they might use it for scheduling. And I like I said, it's schedules, it's not, we all kind of need reminders and things like that. But when it comes to using it for communication, if it doesn't work for the child, then, then back off of that. If they're kinesthetic, then why not teach them sign language? I'm always kind of the belief that sign language is valuable, because not only does it, can it be easier than teaching somebody who's severely apraxic, which has to do with their speech, their brain, they have a disconnect in their motor planning and their ability for their brain to tell their mouths what to do, so they can't talk. But if they, it's very, very difficult to get somebody with apraxia to talk. And most of our kids have some level of apraxia, and Aiden has it very severe. And but if the child has apraxia, you've got to find a modified version of them to talk, because or to get their point across and their feelings across. And you can't just get caught up in all this visual crap and just make them into these PECs or into these augmentative, that's the new thing, is augmentative devices or iPads, getting them to use those to communicate. And some kids just aren't into it, and there could be some other problems. But it also doesn't teach nonverbal communication, which is the hallmark of learning empathy. So a child who they say, well, they're antisocial, they don't know how to read people's facial cues, and they don't have empathy. Well, then why aren't you teaching them sign language, where they actually they're forced to learn it, because that's part of the communication. It's it's nonverbal communication. So sometimes you use the same sign to mean different things. How do they tell the difference? How do they tell it? And you love sign language, huh? He's out here explaining. He's like, yeah, I do. How do they tell the difference? They tell the difference between context and facial expression. So you have to use your emotions, how you feel about something, being sad or happy, or is this a good thing or a bad thing? Is it a question or is it, an answer? You're going to read that on a person's face in sign language. It might not be clear. They're not going to use a question mark. They're not going to use those kinds of things. So it's going to be read on the person's face. So this, to me, would be much more beneficial and as a whole, because it helps build empathy and it helps teach nonverbal communication. So why don't they teach that in schools anymore? Could be laziness, could be, part of the agenda.
I'm pressing for the Gates for Bill Gates.
For real, it could be part of the agenda. It could be it could be laziness but I think that they want to train these kids to be, to fit in with society. And they're saying, well, if you have these devices, like all the kids are texting these days, so why not the kids with autism can use these texting tools to communicate with, but I say society is broken. So, the child needs to do whatever they need to do, and we need to adjust to them because we allowed this epidemic to happen. So now it's our responsibility to pick up the pieces. And I mean we, as in all of us grown-ups walking around with taking care of these autistic children and these children who have severe apraxia or, the whole spectrum of problems that make their communication issues. So it's up to us to kind of learn their communication style and not to put them just completely dependent upon machines to talk.
Definitely. Definitely.
So that's how I roll. But but I mean I really believe that it may. I'm just going to put it out there. Yeah, it's probably part of the agenda to get them away from that because a lot of the techniques that they use to teach autistic children actually keep them in their state of autism, and I've witnessed that over the years. The behavioral programs and not teaching them sign language, teaching them devices and things like that. They keep them trapped in their own world. Because just think about kids that aren't even autistic that are sitting there on their texting.
Oh, totally. Grown-ups. I was talking about a friend I was hanging with the other day, and I'm about to move, and I was hanging with him, and the whole time, I don't think he was doing it to avoid me purposely or be rude, but he was just on his phone, like he couldn't, get off, And I feel the pull sometimes too, just being on Facebook. Like I'm going to take a Facebook break. We both were talking about taking an internet break because I feel like it just kind of sucks you in,
It does. It's like you literally plug into the machine, and so when people are plugged into the machine, they're not plugged into their outer environment. Yeah. But when you're using sign language, one thing that was very striking to me was that, I went, you absolutely have to engage with the person that you're talking to. You cannot sign and be driving your car. You cannot sign and be watching TV. You have to look at them, and they have to look at you. It's a human-to-human contact, and there's no extraneous nothing. And because otherwise that's going to totally screw it up, and you're not going to understand what the other person is saying, and vice versa. So, if I'm holding the baby and I'm trying to sign, I can. It's very difficult sometimes to do everything with one hand when I'm trying to sign to Ada. So sometimes I have to, put her down and have someone else hold her and then really get his attention, engage him. And I just think, how many kids with autism would totally be, build these skills, these nonverbal communication skills, if this is what we were focusing on, and then we were doing it this way. And if we were respecting their level of intelligence, which many of them are kinesthetic. And this is so much more kinesthetic, but it's not done that way. So why? So I don't know. I have to kind of put on the tinfoil hat a little bit and say I think it's part of the agenda. But because it's just so easy, and to learn, and it's not that difficult, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful way to communicate. It really is. So because it is so dependent upon emotions and engagement, and really, so and if the society has a hard time with it, then that's society's fault. We need to clean up our act and start getting on their level, trying to bring them into, and instead of bringing them into our sick, demented world, going into their world, which is innocent, and they're not trying to hurt anybody. They're just trying to make it. They're just trying to survive.
Yeah, tell me about it.
So anywho, so y'all stay tuned. We're going to take a short break, and then when we get back, we will be with Clint Richardson, Clint Dog. Right?
Everything I'm looking at seems crazy. The newspaper, the television, nothing's right. Nothing's telling me what's true. It's like I fell into a bucket of cream and kicked my legs until I became a mouse. What's that about? I'm a conspiracy realist, not a conspiracy theorist. I want a t-shirt that represents me. What? There's one that's available? Go to shop.truthertease.com, says the voice in my head. Shop.truthertease.com. It's not crazy. I'm not afraid to go on the internet and go to shop.truthertease.com. I'm not scared. I've taken out bowling balls that look like you. That's what I said. Straighten out. Get your conspiracy realist t-shirt. Don't make me come over there. You look good. You look good.
All right, welcome back. Thanks for listening to Truth or Talk. On today's show, we are bringing back our friend Clint Richardson. Clint is a writer, independent researcher, radio talk show host, documentary filmmaker, and public speaker. His radio show, The Corporation Nation, is on RBN, the Republic Broadcast News. Isn't that right, Alice? That's where he goes, yeah. She had something to say about it. It runs Monday through Friday, 6 to 8 Central Time. You can find the archive shows at corporationnationradioarchives.wordpress.com and his writing at realityblogger1g wordpress.com. Please welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show, Clint Richardson. Hey, Clint, what's going on, man?
Not much. How's it going?
Good. Yeah.
Very nice.
A lot of stuff going on in the world today, right? It's just a lot of crazy.
Yeah.
Just craziness.
Always.
You could say that.
Clint's going to help us figure some of that out today.
All right.
I'm excited. So,
me too.
with all the crazy stuff that's going on in the world, do you think expatriation is a solid solution for people living in the United States? What are your thoughts on that?
Expatriation is... How do you explain expatriation? Expatriation is something that happens in the system. It's not really something that takes you out of the system. In other words, you're still considered as that sort of... When we say the word free, for instance, we're talking about the act of enfranchisement. So it's very important to understand that when you say that someone, like when a slave, for instance, was set free, or when people were made citizens in the 14th Amendment, that the word free means to be incorporated into a franchise, into a corporation. All right, so a rat is set free in a cage, in other words, right? So when you're talking about expatriation, you're really not giving up that status of being the proletariat, of being the lower class, if you will, or of someone that needs to be governed. The only way you can really... It's hard to explain, but you have to really sever the tie that you have to the artifice. You have to sever the tie completely, and you have to... The process that a friend of mine has been taking, he actually has gotten the court to recognize him as a private, basically a private man, or what they call a private citizen. So he has no federal law. There is no federal law. There's no taxes. There's no DMV. There's nothing. And he's what you might call a peaceful inhabitant. He's what you might call a lot of different things. But the point is that he got the court to actually recognize him aside from that quote-unquote person. The only thing that can really expatriate is the person, the fictional character, right? And right now, Social Security has been established in about 140 countries. Okay, that's the slave system. That's the mark system. So wherever you go from here, you're going to repatriate as that same person or whatever into another system, basically. So it's not really expatriation. expatriatism. It's something entirely different. It's hard to put that into a simple context, but when you have a remedy that's within the system, it's probably not a remedy at all.
Yeah, okay. So the answer is no.
Well, it's
and there's
it's a
nowhere
matter
to run, really.
Well, every piece of land on Earth has been claimed at this point, and at this point, it's more a matter of figuring out how to peaceably inhabit, if you will, or to become something that is not governed in this. Well, the best way to explain it is that there's two governments in the United States. There's the one that's the Constitution and the constituted authorities, and that's created by the bloodline, the people. And then there's this second sort of international law or admiralty thing that we're all in as commercial vehicles, commercial vessels, basically. So we are all acting in that capacity. We have no rights under the Constitution whatsoever, and are strictly considered as human capital, as chattel, as some commodities, basically. And that's the whole government is set up as a commercial thing. So when you say expatriate, there's really nothing patriotic about the system we're in the first place. So it's kind of hard for me to say, it's just knowing what the system actually is so disturbing once you really figure it out. But explaining it is like, wow, there's so much to it.
But how about the fact that if you're entered into this relationship, or you're entered into this without really knowing it, and without being given, I guess, the truth of what this relationship would mean, isn't that a fraud on their behalf?
Well, see, fraud is... You have to understand, first of all, that everything, all these words that we use, fraud and lie, and all these different words, they define terms, not you. Okay, so the word that you use is their word. It's called terms of art. So if you go into the field of botany, then you have certain terms of art that you're going to use. If you're a doctor, or a pharmacist, you're going to be using words that other people don't use. Well, in government, same thing. So all these words, like I said, free means to enfranchise. Freedom means the government has the power over your state of being free, because dom means dominate or dominion. To lie, get this, to lie is to subsist and exist. Right? Government is a lie. It exists as a lie. It's very, very clear. So when you say fraud, well, how do you define fraud, and how does government define fraud? The question is, if you're participating in their system fraudulently because you're occupying their property, which is their name, that birth record, that birth registration threw you into this system, and you've never said, well, that's fraud, then you're participating in fraud. And the maxims of law, their maxims, their principles are very clear. If you're participating in fraud, then it's not fraud. You cannot call it fraud if you're doing so in your surname, in your person. It's their name. You're acting as their commercial vehicle. You're only in America as a commercial entity until you prove otherwise. So you can't call it fraud, and that's the big trick. The other aspect. Go ahead.
I just want to say, interject. So in other words, it's like you're playing their game. You're in their game and playing by their rules. So so for it to turn around, you have to. Do you learn how to play the game by their rules, or do you create your own game?
A lot of people get very wealthy as slaves, as voluntary slaves, and that's what we're doing. See, the notion of citizenship or U.S. citizenship, again, it puts you on the most common, baser level, and the word common means goyim. People actually means goyim. When you say you're ethnically from a country, the word ethnic, again, it's their term. It actually refers to you being, claiming to be from that country as opposed to from God or from your mother or from whatever. So let me just give you an example here. A volunteer. See, we have our own definition of what a volunteer is, what a voluntary society is, but we're missing the fact that as long as you're getting any benefit, any rights, any privileges, and keep in mind, rights are forced upon you. They're not something that is good. Okay, a right that comes from government, your right, according to Title 42, Section 1981, is to be put in pain, punished, taxed, licensed, extorted, and exacted. Those are your rights. So we have to understand what a right is when it's coming from a corporation, the government. But one of the tenets of volunteerism, or to be a volunteer in the legal system, we go to the law of master and servant. Okay, the term volunteer includes one who, without the assent of the master and without justification arising from a legitimate personal interest, unnecessarily assists a servant in the performance of his master's business. And this goes into the law of agency, because we are basically, everything we do, the reason we need permission and license to do everything is because we're operating a federal person, a federal agency. We're registered agents of the name that we use, and we get all of our benefits and all the laws, and everything is attached to the name, to the person. We have no law. The only reason the law has anything to do with us, and I'm talking about the federal laws, the commercial law, is because we operate in this corporate capacity, in this agency. Right? So we're foreigners in our states, because when we're born, when we're birthed in the birth certificate, we're actually birthed into a district, the District of Columbia. District means distress or seizure. So it's literally not the District of Washington, D.C., it's the seizure, literally, or Sassane of Washington, D.C. There's so much to this that we could spend 4 hours probably talking about this. But you have to understand that they define what a volunteer is, okay? Unconstrained by interference, unimpelled by another's influence, spontaneous, acting of oneself, done by design or intention, purpose, and intended. So when you go and you get in your car and you have a driver's license, when you go and you use money, you're doing all these things voluntarily. You're participating in their system. You're claiming rights and benefits and privileges from their system. And that is what volunteerism is. So I hate to tell people this, and it really is a true statement when I say that in order to escape all of this stuff that we talk about, including, mandatory vaccines, because the mandatory law is going to be on the person, which means that by operating the person, you're going to have to get vaccine in order to continue in commerce. It's the same thing as the mark of the beast. Take the mark of the beast in order to buy, sell, and trade. You have to get marked. You have to get that vaccine. You have to get the chip. That's really what it boils down to. Now, voluntary ignorance, because we're ignorant of all these things that we don't, half of us don't even know we have a person, that we have this alternative identity. Voluntary ignorance exists where a party might, by taking reasonable pains, have acquired the necessary knowledge, but has neglected to do so. That's according to Black's Fourth. So when government looks at you, it says, hey, you're voluntarily operating this person that we have assigned to you. Your parents abandoned you at the birth process. We found you as a prize of the sea, and therefore we offer you literally a commercial vessel called a person, and you are a registered agent of that person. Everything you do in the state, therefore, needs permission, and you're voluntarily ignorant of all the terms and concepts that go along with that. And here again, the maxim of law is very clear. To know the law, remember, it's not me that's saying this, it's them. To know the law and to be bound by the law are the same exact things. So you don't need to know the law to be bound by it. All you have to do is be ignorant of the law and yet agree to continue to operate within their system. So it's a really, really deep subject that we've been covering a lot on my show, and unless we went through it step by step, it would be very difficult to actually put into words. Well, let me give you another example, though. Okay, one of my favorite quotes is from the IRS. This will tell you the difference between what you think voluntary is and what they think it is. And it's always their opinion that matters as long as you're operating in their system. The U.S. tax system, which the IRS oversees and administers, is based on the principle of voluntary compliance. Okay, well, why are so many people in jail, though, for not paying taxes? According to the IRS, this means the taxpayers are expected to comply with the law without being compelled to do so by action of a federal agent, but then it tells you what it doesn't mean, which is what we all think. Okay, voluntary compliance does not mean that the taxpayer is free to decide whether or not to comply with the law.
Say that again?
Voluntary compliance to the IRS code does not mean that the taxpayer is free to decide whether or not to comply with the law.
So,
yeah,
they're saying, yeah, go ahead.
So there's your fraud. So what do you think it defines fraud as?
It's like that we can commit fraud, but they can't. That's kind of how I look at it. Like you can, or according to what they see it as fraud if we don't pay, whether or not that's the law.
Well, no, right? it's that you're in fraud by acting as April Bowden, the name on your birth certificate that was registered as a corporation, and using that surname, the number, and all the marks and everything, signs and symbols and sigils that are attached to it, you're acting in fraud. If you're acting in fraud already, then one, you're bound to the law that person, that name, that number is bound to. Two, you can't call it fraud because you're participating in the fraud.
Right.
So there is no fraud.
I'm an accessory. I'm guilty too, so therefore, because anything that I've done under my birth certificate or Social Security number, so how does the Social Security number play in? Like, so if you have no birth certificate but you have a Social Security number, because some people can do that, naturalized citizens or, people here on a visa or whatnot supposedly can do that. So what's the difference and how,
Well, there's another word there, when you look at the word naturalize, it's not a very pleasant word. Remember, all words in the legal realm are designed to take you out of nature, out of the natural law, out from under God. The word legal literally means against God or against God's law. Literally, that's what it means. So anytime you agree and consent, whether it's tacit or, written, doesn't matter. The whole system is based on the fact that you're participating. Well, to really understand, you have to actually read the Bible. I have my Bible open and my legal dictionary right next to it because I figured out that the Bible is written in the King's language, which is the higher language, which is the legal language. Okay, so the Bible, the reason people can't understand the Bible is because they're not reading it as a legal book. Folks, the Bible is the law. Okay? The Bible is law.
I remember you saying that last time, yeah.
Right. So you have to understand what's written in the Bible. And what the Bible actually says would actually shock people if they could figure it out. It says, you shall not act in person. You shall not take an oath. God does not respect persons. That's any corporation. That's don't take flattering titles. Don't be surety, which is what a straw man is. It's what we are. We are surety to the person. So we have a bond. We're bonded to that person. That's why we go to jail for the crimes of the person. Right? That's what agency is. It's sort of an insurance with a surname. Surety. So when you have a surname, that last name, that's the state's name. And the Christian name that's under it, the first name, is therefore bound by that surety. So again, very, very deep topic, But you have to understand that this whole system is based on the confirmation. You want to really understand things, look up the word confirmation. You see it in church, you see it in government. All the states had to confirm the Constitution as their law of the land. And then you look at the law of the land. Everything has to be defined. You cannot use a word in this system without defining the term. Law of the land sounds like some romantic, patriotic thing. No, it just means due process of law. Okay. So then what is due process of law? Well, you look up the word due. It means that you are bound to them. The process, process is an interesting word. It has the word CESS, means to proceed, means it's going forward upon you, it's putting you under the law. So if you're due, in other words, if you're bound to the law, which means you're literally acting in fraud, you're acting in person, well then due process of law simply means that you are you have an obligation to be under the law. See, all these words, all these terms, they're very, very different than what we've been taught in the romanticism and the patriotism of school, and it's just so vastly different. Now, keep in mind that I have my book is now 1,000 pages at least and counting. It is a full explanation of the entire legal language as it pertains. So I've been doing this for a while, and I hope to have that out this year. But you just have to understand that every word that you use in the legal language is going to be opposite. That is so important to understand. So when you're reading the Bible,
it's like sorcery.
Same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it is
kind of
sorcery or black magic,
right? Right. Black
Yeah.
magic.
You have no idea how accurate that statement is.
Mm-hmm.
When you say it's sorcery, it is literally word magic. Literally. I want to read you a definition.
It gets into like.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I wanted to say it gets into also kind of like NLP, right? Like the neuro-linguistic programming, and you can also like. Okay. Sorry, read the definition. Go on.
When you go to a court and you're talking to the judge, let me give you an example of why the common language, and remember, common means goyim. It means slave. It means the lowest possible place you can be. Do you want to be under the common law? Well, that's up to you. If you know that common means goyim, it means cattle, it means massive illiterates, then okay, you know, vulgar, that's what it means. So when you're going into court, you're using the language that I call the language of emotion, of love and hate and all those things. Well, those things don't exist in legal, because legal is artificial. It can't have emotion. So people are going into court, they're getting angry, they're using emotion where emotion has no place. You have to stay very calm and realize you're talking in that higher language. I mean, think of like Spock going to court, you know. But just so you understand, this is word magic. Let's go to the word conjure. Okay. What is from the Old English, conjuratio, a swearing together, an oath administered to several together, a combination or confederacy under oath, a compact of the inhabitants of a commune, as in communism, or municipality, as in the city or county you live in, confirmed by their oaths to each other, and which was the basis of the commune. Oh yeah, you live in a commune. Conjuration. Right? A plot or compact made by persons combining by oath to do any public harm. Well, that's what the birth certificate is. The word confederacy means conspiracy. See, people are looking for conspiracies in government when they don't realize that the government is the conspiracy. It's a conjuration of words. It's a promise or an oath to take that the people take to something artificial. This is why God or the Bible says, take no oaths. Your vows, your promises should only be personal and to God. Right? The offense of having a conference or commerce with evil spirits. That's what a conjuration is. Do you have commerce with evil spirits? No. What you have commerce with is your artificial person, your straw man, your name. You see how this works? Witchcraft, enchantment, and sorcery.
Are you familiar with Mark Passio's work?
I am.
I was listening to his lecture on natural law, and he was likening government to like mind control, and I was like, wow, that's really profound. But I'm starting to see.
Govern is gouvernaire, which means control, to control, or to steer a ship. We act in a citizenship. And ment is mentis, or mind, which you can kind of figure out. It means to control the mind. So self-government would be to control your own mind. But we participate in national, as in the law of nations, of commercial government, a conjuration, to take us away from self-government, from the Bible, from everything else, from the natural law, from God's law, etc., etc. So the whole thing, if you just understand this one concept, that the word legal literally means opposed to God, which means opposed to the Bible, means opposed to nature, it is an absolutely, in other words, it's a lie. Everything about it is a lie. And they define lie as to exist.
Yeah, definitely.
So what does it mean to do something? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, go on. You ask, and then I'll elaborate.
I was going to say, so what does it mean to do something illegally? Are you with God then?
Well, okay, this is really, it gets confusing for people, but the best way I can answer that, I mean, if you look up illegal, it just means to do something against the law. Well, okay, but who makes the law? Which law are you talking about? You always have to define every term. Okay, every term. So when you say against the law or illegal, well, whose law, right? If the legal law is designed to absolutely disrupt and destroy everything in nature, well, then it's their law that you're breaking. Not, it. So legal and illegal are very important, especially because people are promoting the legalization of marijuana, right?
Right.
Well, first of all, marijuana is a slang term. They want you to use that word because it's the only way they can get you on charges that you're holding cannabis, is to call it marijuana. That's a Mexican word. It's not the actual name. They use it as a trick. It's the legal name. Just like firearms, when you say the right to bear arms, why do you think they call it firearms? Because they want to distinguish, they want to make sure that you're talking about a fictional representation of what the Constitution calls arms, so they call it firearms. See, firearms is the legal version of a gun or whatever. So they want you to use legal terms that they define, so that you're literally confirming that you're doing something illegal. Okay, so if we legalize marijuana, people have, for some reason, even though it's been this way forever, they think legalize means everybody can have it. No. Legalize means to make illegal except with permission from government. So anything that's legal, including marriage, including anything that's legal, is actually illegal unless you have permission. So do you really want to legalize, quote-unquote, marijuana or cannabis or hemp or anything else? Well, no, you don't. You want to decriminalize. You want to say there's no law attached to it. You want to say absolutely not is it legal, because that means you need permission or license to actually do it, because otherwise it's illegal. That's why people are being arrested and thrown in jail still for growing cannabis.
Right.
Why? If you can do it legally over here, why? How can it possibly be illegal for someone to do it in nature? Well, legal is against nature, remember? See, all these
Right.
words, we take for granted. We use them incorrectly because we have no idea that every word we use when it comes to the legal language is quite opposite to what we have been taught in basically our babble, our common or vulgar language.
I have a question. What do you think about English as the implementation as the lingua franca and its ability, or its maybe, what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe goal of brainwashing people. Does that make sense? Like I'm an English teacher. I've taught in different countries. I am realizing that English is becoming the lingua franca of the universe. Where, as I also see people that are like, when they learn English, a lot of them kind of forego their own concepts, and they kind of tend to adhere to this paradigm that you're talking about. Does that make sense? I'm trying to...
I think so. I mean,
does this translate
use
into
the
other
example.
languages?
Yeah. Well, like the legal language is a combination of Latin and Greek. And we call Latin and Greek dead languages. What's that?
Okay. Well, I'm just curious. As somebody that's I'm learning Mandarin. I see other people learn Mandarin. Okay, so Mandarin, Chinese, Spanish. The Spanish, okay, is Latin derived. I can see that. But somebody that's learning, that it's their first language is maybe Mandarin, and then they learn English, right? And they're coming into these concepts as well, or does it have their own kind of mind control or in their own language? Does that make sense?
Well, they're called romantic languages, right?
Well, not Mandarin.
So, do you think there's
something like Mandarin?
Right, but it's still the common language. So, do you think that romance exists in the legal realm? Just as an example,
Well, no, yeah.
Well, because let me tell you, I tried to look up the word love in the legal dictionary. It doesn't exist. Okay, that should tell you everything. Now, I did find one dictionary that defined love. It said, see consideration. Well, okay, so love, in the legal parlance, the only way they can consider love is as a consideration. So I go and I look up consideration. It says inducement to contract. Okay, so why are people getting married? Because they fall in love, which is a vulgar, they consider that a very low thing, because there is no love in a fictional world, right? Everything is fictional. So so in other words, it's an inducement to contract, which means you're marrying your husband and your wife. They join together, they incorporate the surname, and the state becomes the parent of the children, and basically the courts say that the state is the boss when it comes to anything in the marriage. It's why you have to go through all this divorce and permission to get married, because marriage is illegal without permission. Think about that. Marriage is illegal. All right? Now, let's go back to expatriate. Okay? In Webster's 1828. What happens when you expatriate? All right? First of all, it's a Latin term, ex and patria. Okay? Now, we've talked about, I think with you guys, we talked about the notion of parens patria, which is means the country or the nation, the state is the parent. And that's the doctrine that's applied to all children that are registered at birth. Okay? So, ex and patria means ex-country. So, patria means country. Means to banish, but here's how it actually is defined. To expatriate oneself is to quit one's country, renouncing citizenship and allegiance in that country, only to take residence and become a citizen in another country. Okay? The right to expatriate oneself is denied in feudal countries and much controverted in the United States. So if you're expatriating, all you're really doing is reassigning yourself in some other country of the New World Order. Okay, you can't because expatriation is a legal process, it is not, they call, for instance, Christ is the Redeemer. And anybody that I know that still lives in this country and is not under the law has introduced the Bible as their law and claimed Christ as their Redeemer. Now, a lot of people don't like that, but hey, too bad. If you want to understand what's happening, you have to understand that the Bible is the foundation of all law. It's the higher law than the legal. Okay, so to expatriate literally means to take residence, become a citizen in another country. Now, if you were to try to expatriate from this country and still live here, you'd have no more. You'd have no more "quote unquote" consideration. In other words, they would look at you as basically a belligerent, as they look at an insurgent or a terrorist. You would literally have absolutely no rights whatsoever, because you never got government to recognize you as something that is higher than government. All you did was just become, you're basically putting your finger to the state and saying, I'm no longer part of your corporation, part of your commercial thing. I put my finger to you, and I'm gonna, well, it's their country, man. It's their thing. And unless you actually prove to the government that corporation that you are higher than that government, as opposed to expatriation, which means, hey, I quit, I don't like you anymore, screw you, I'm openly suggesting that they're not gonna treat you very well. But if you actually go through the process and say, I'm higher than you, I'm responsible enough to govern myself, to control my own actions, I'm going to live under God's law, the natural law, and I'm going to get a declaratory judgment, for instance, from the court that says so, that recognizes me as private. Now, this is, again, another concept here. We have to understand that everything we do is public. So, our name, our social security number, our identity is not ours. It's a public domain. That's why your identity theft happens. It's why all your records are public. Now, the people in the United States, the actual people, the bloodline, everything they do is private. Okay, so they are higher. They are not under the law, and so they're whatever happens with them is also not under the law. They are called the landholders, and there's quite a few of them, and we are basically foreigners in the States. We're domiciled in the United States. We have residence in the state, and we're acting as a third-party interloper, basically, using the federal vehicle, or the federal vessel, the citizenship, to conduct business. The whole state government is set up by the people to govern the agents, us, basically. It's I don't know how to put this in any clearer way except to say we are cattle on a farm. When you people something, when you people a farm, it means you're putting cows into a pasture, basically. The word colony means plantation. All these words have very specific meanings. This whole system was set up as nothing but a commercial instrument, the whole thing. And we are just commercial human capital being managed. That's all we are, by the people who set up this government. So each people of each state, basically. The point I'm trying to make is that we are not the people. Anybody that's listening to this show, aside from government agents, are not the people, as we believe we are. And that is the most important thing about this.
And so when you say that we're like cattle, and we have these laws, or coming in, forcing vaccine mandates and things like that, just like a cow, you don't really get to say if they're going to pump you with antibiotics or whatever. We just kind of have to take it. I mean, is that it? Because we're acting in their...
No, I want you to understand that this whole thing is voluntary. Now, you can expatriate. You can do all kinds of things. You can quit the system anytime you want to. It's called quit claim. You can prove your status is higher than what you are and separate yourself from the system anytime you want to. But to continue,
Yeah.
to live in your house that is registered in your name, which is government's name, to continue to operate as the secondary or third level person that is granted the ability to raise your children. If you want to get any kind of benefit from government, if you want to drive your car, which is their car because you registered it to them under their name, their vessel, which is why you need permission. If you want to keep doing all these things, then when government says, okay, it's mandatory for, and this is how it'll say it, it's mandatory for all persons within the jurisdiction of the United States. Okay, that's all persons. Well, that's not you. You are operating the person. So as long as you want to operate the person, because you are bound to that person, that fictional character, that cartoon character in a cartoon world, that legal person that's not you, but that you're bound to, like an invisible chain, well, when it says all persons will be required, it's saying, well, when you appear, when you put on that veil of artificial clothing, when you appear and you are, say, conducting business, using a credit card, using a bank, driving a car, doing anything that's in person, you're not going to be able to do that until you get vaccinated. You see, to operate the person, the surety to the person must have a vaccine. Now, the only way you're going to be able to avoid that, people, again, don't want to hear this because they've never read the Bible. They don't understand what the Bible is actually telling them because they don't know the language that the Bible is written in, using the common vulgar language. You're going to have to give, everybody knows the story of Jesus. He says, give everything up. Walk over their commercial sea. Walk on the water. Don't touch it. Don't be sunk. Don't sink into it. Be a man, not a person. Don't respect persons. Don't let them give you flattering titles. Don't take oaths. So if you have property, again, another word that people don't know what it means, all you have is the right of use. You don't have the right of disposal. You don't have any rights in that land at all because it's not the land that you are holding. You're only holding a piece of paper that says you're a tenant and you have rights to use someone else's property. All the land is held by the landholders, which is the real people of the United States. All right? So the only way that you're going to avoid any kind of mandate from government is to cease in your operation of its commercial vessel. Now, a good way to look at that is to compare it to nurses. How many nurses now have been fired for refusing to take vaccines? Are they, is it the nurse that's being fired? Is it the woman or the man that's being fired? Or is it the permission to be a nurse, which is a fictional character, a flattering title, right? It's because the living being that has bound to that title of nurse, which is a fiction, it doesn't exist, because that woman or man will not get a vaccine, they are not allowed to use government's title of nurse or person. You see how that works? That's the best example I can give, where 22,000 nurses now have come together and said we refuse to vaccinate. And here in Utah, we had several hundred nurses get fired. They had to close a whole wing of the hospital. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
The reason they're getting fired is because they're trying to operate their commercial vehicle, their commercial vessel. They're trying to use a government privilege, which is that degree of crime that's assigned with a diploma, right? They're now a registered nurse. Well, anything you register belongs to government. So if you're a registered nurse and they say get a vaccine, you have two choices: quit being a nurse or get vaccinated. Okay? You're not forced to take a vaccine, but you're forced to take a vaccine if you want to continue in the fraud that is called a nurse. If you want to continue in the fraud that is called a person, then you're going to have to get a vaccine. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does make sense. So when, and what I thought was really kind of interesting here in California, we had this bill going on that they're trying to mandate all the schools. There's one for adults too. They're just going nuts, but they want to take. Right?
They're crazy.
But they have been for a long time. You know, we saw this happening back in 2011. They did this bill where they let little 12-year-old kids go in and get their STD vaccines without their parents' knowledge, and then they took away the philosophical exemption, and then they are taking away all religious and philosophical exemptions, so in order to go to school. But they added an amendment saying that this excludes kids that are being homeschooled. And I thought, well, that's kind of, people are upset about that it's like you either have to homeschool or not. But, I mean, I think that they might be looking at it looking at it wrong. I mean, they should be homeschooling anyway.
Well, I agree. Let's
totally.
be clear. Let's be clear, okay? So let's go back. A person is a man considered according only to the rank he holds in society, all right, with the right to which the place he holds that rank entitles him and the duties which it imposes, okay? Mm-hmm. All right, well, what does that mean? So a person is not the man, it's only the rank of the man, and man means male or female. All right, persons are the subject of rights and duties. Remember, rights are something that's forced upon you.
Yeah.
All right, okay. What they consider us as is human. Hu was the god of Sufism, so to be human means of the form and characteristics of man, but not man. Belonging or relative to man as distinguished from God. That's what human means. That's why they call us human capital. They can't refer to us as man because here it is right here. Oh shoot, where is it? I thought I had it. Here's that word again, natural. See, when you're sending your kids to school, they are natural children. They're natural persons, which is a human being who is as such a legal entity. Okay, that is what you're sending to school. Just like the nurse. If the child is going to go to school as a student, another government word, then the child eventually they're going to pass it to the point where in order to be a child, you're going to have to be vaccinated. In order to be a school child and have the right and the privilege of going to school, you're going to have to be vaccinated, just like the nurses and just like everybody else. A natural child. This is how the courts define a natural child. Because remember, the state is the parent of the child. The birth certificate is literally the abandonment. The word delivery means abandoned. You're a foundling. You are found in the district or the seizure. So you're literally natural child, according to Ammon versus Morishi in 1955. Natural child is the ordinary euphemism for bastard or illegitimate. Okay? The birth certificate is the bastardization and the illegitimate or the illegitimacy of your child. You abandon it to the state at birth. You better take it back. Okay? So what I wanted, and a monster is also, human being is also defined as monster. Okay? Lower animal, again. Man, the reason they don't use the word man and they put human on it is that man or homo is a term of nature. Person or persona is a term of civil law. Okay, when you say the word person, when you say your name, I am Clint Richardson or I am April Bowden, all right? You're a person, so you are of or belonging to the civil law. If I say, well, I just am, well, I'm still in nature. But the second I attach a government-instituted name to that word, I am, right, then I've become something of law, not something of nature. A legal fiction is a rule of law that assumes something which is or may be false to be true. That's a maxim of law. Truth in law is generally a lie. That's the Protection of government draws with it subjection, and subjection protection. The protection of an individual by government is on the condition of his submission to the laws. It's okay. So if the law is vaccination, and you're asking for protection or rights from government, then the condition of that protection is your submission to the laws, and that means if it says get vaccinated, well, you're going to submit to it. See, this is horrible. I got one more thing to tell you. See, people are confused about what freedom means, and this is the perfect example because, we have a religious exemption, right?
Yeah.
Wrong. I was wrong about this. I thought religious exemption means that you could literally use your personal feelings, your personal religion, embrace it, and actually say, because of my religion, I choose not to act, or I choose on behalf of my child not to act.
Right.
Let me define freedom of religion for you. This is Black's Fourth. Okay? Freedom of religion embraces the concept of freedom to believe and freedom to act, but it separates those two things. Okay, one is in the mind, one is actually the actions you take according to your belief. The first, which is belief, is absolute. You can think whatever the hell you want to think about your religion. But the second, which is the freedom to act according to your religion, remains subject to the regulation for protection of society. You cannot act according to your belief, because you are operating in a government, commercial entity, a person. Okay, so you are given the freedom of religion, which means you can believe in the fairy tales that are presented to you by all the religions of the world, so thousands of them. But you cannot act on the Bible. You cannot act on any religious thought you have. Now, the fact that there are religious exemptions is purely a voluntary act by government. They can take away those exemptions at any time. Why? Because they are a conspiracy, because they're acting in fraud, and they are telling you that by acting in fraud, which is in their person, that you have no right to act upon your own beliefs. So the second they take away religious exemption, all they're doing is fulfilling the actual definition of freedom of religion. They're saying you cannot act on your conscious beliefs because you're acting under their law and their rules, and that is against religion. That is against nature. That is against all that is good, holy, and natural, and under God. We have to understand that that's what freedom of religion means. You can believe, but you can't act on your belief. What the hell good is it?
Right. But then they're acting on a religious belief because vaccination is a fraud, or what they're claiming that the reason that you need to have it is a fraud, because they're saying to protect society, as you pointed out, that you can have your belief, but then you still have to, for the betterment of society, act within whatever.
Society is just another word for public. It's another word for goyim. It's another word for the zoo that is the mass of illiterates. That's all it means. Society, socialism, whatever you want to call it, it all means the same thing. We use different words to invoke different emotional responses, but when you actually define the terms according to them, still means, like you said, as much as cattle have the freedom to resist, being under the farmer, we have the same notion. The only difference between us and cattle is that they are required, according to their law, which is, again, the Bible, to recognize that notion of free choice. You have the choice to quit this at any time. Nurses have the choice to quit their nursing profession any time. They don't have to vaccinate, just like persons or men don't have to get vaccines if they quit operating the person. All right, so it's this is not easy stuff. This is not something that is easy at all. The process is not easy, but you have to understand that the whole thing is based on the notion of what volunteerism is, and volunteerism again is defined by them. So all the words that you're going to be using, you better realize that they mean something different to government.
And so if you don't act, like let's say if you're a nurse, but you don't register. You're not a registered nurse, but you've done all the work and all the to understand what nurses do. Let's say, so you can be in other words, like you can be a health care provider of some sort without registering. So then they can't force you at that point. And right,
well,
you can just do it on your own.
Not as a person. See, this is where people get caught up in everything, is because as a person, if you want to quote unquote practice any kind of thing, whether it's law or medicine or anything, if you want to practice something that they have a copyright on or a patent, right, then you must obtain license, because it's illegal otherwise.
Oh, I see.
I hate them.
I know.
You're such assholes.
Dude, it's horrible. When you realize that this system is strictly a system of slavery, and when you then realize that it's voluntary slavery, my God. You know, when you realize
when you realize that, though, I want to say, but then when you realize that, you feel empowered. If it's voluntary, then you know how they are being enslaved. So me coming across this information empowers me, you know.
Well, you just
it makes
remember. You should hate it. You have to. It's literally. And again, when you define terms, you realize that again, people don't like to hear these things. But this system is literally defined as Satan. Satan only means an adversary to nature and an adversarial to man. Satan is defined as the adversary. Well, what could be more adversarial to nature and to mankind than the concept of citizenship, the concept of personhood, becoming something that is completely artificial, doing things against nature and against God's creation, as we call it, right? Going against everything that is good, the very system that supports your life, altering DNA, spraying this. What is more satanistic, which means adversarial to man and nature, than what we're talking about today? That you're supposed to hate this, but the system has been put over your it's been put over your eyes. So that you can't see. It's been instituted in such a clever way. The whole language was changed, which is a whole other subject, from basically actions, verbs, reality, to nouns, which are names, persons, places, and things. So, everything has a name, and it's the name that is controlled, not the actual thing. Well, in the case of animals, if I say the deer or the cattle are controlled, they don't have a voice to say no. Their problem is us, because we can actually say no. We actually can quit their system and absolutely not, right? That's the difference between man and animal, which is why they want to call us human, because they want us to be sophist. They want us to be not of God or not of nature. However you want to look at it. They're the same word, by the way. To deny God's existence is to actually deny nature itself, because the word God in the highest sense refers to the word Jehovah. And if you go to Webster's 1828, which fascinating concept, and you actually look at the concordances in the Bible, this is one of my favorite words, because it put me in a whole new light. Because the word God, the word Jehovah, when we're talking about the notion of God, it's a verb. It means, when we say supreme being, when we say being capitalized, it's everything that is in existence right now. It's reality. It is nature. It is everything that you see, the entire universe. It's called the permanent being. Right? So God is a verb. But what these guys had to do is they said, well, just like Hammurabi, well, here's the lineage of all the gods, and then finally there's me, and that's why I get to rule. Well, then the Jewish thing came along. Now we have one God, right? And they put a name on God. They made God into a noun, and now they can say we can be God on earth. We can rule in God's name, because we anthropomorphized God. We personify. We turn God from what is everything in nature, including us. We turn God from that into a fictional character, a persona, right? And from the persona, the name, as opposed to the real thing, we now have a line of what we call magistrates. Now, the word magistrate just means God. When we go to court, we plea. The word plea comes from the word pray. We pray to gods. The magistrates are the presidents, the popes, the judges, the governors, the mayors. Those are all called magistrates, and the word magistrate simply means God.
I'm not being facetious or anything, or flippant, but have you thought about making infographics to simplify a lot of this information? Or, in addition to your book, I know you have your book coming out, but
well, the book is specifically designed to. I call it. It's called Straw Man, the real story of your artificial person, right? So it's literally, if you could learn a language, if you could understand the basics of the Bible, and you could understand the legal language, and it was written in a story, to where you could go through the definitions from different sources and have it all explained to you. That's the purpose of my book. So that you can actually learn these words and actually really comprehend how they're the adversary of all that is good and right.
So it's through a narrative or like a graphic novel or something, or?
No, it's just me doing what I'm doing now, except in much more, probably more clear terms. I'm a better writer, I think, than.
No, you're a great speaker too. It's just that I just look at a lot of people, and I just feel like the majority of people need to know this information, but it's, a lot of them, it's just, they're so overwhelmed, they have a lot of, they're working or their mind is elsewhere, or it's just a lot of information for them to take on at one time. So even in the research that April and I have been doing, I've been just looking for ways to simplify our work and get it out to more people, where, we can get them to absorb some major concepts, and then if they want to do even more research, they can do that, but just,
one of the things I've learned along the way is that anything that's easy is probably not worth doing.
No, that's true, but I'm just saying, April and I, we research. That's all we do. We research. I will watch all your lectures. I will watch an 8-hour lecture on natural seminar, but I think that people have just been so, brainwashed and so distracted that I at least want to give them some kind of plugs for them to at least, you know what I mean? Divert their attention.
Everybody wants the easy path, and everybody wants a simplistic version. Look at a legal dictionary, look at the Bible, and tell me that you can simplify such incredible writings. You can't. And so this is, let's go back. Let's go back to our source here of why we're all in this situation. What was it called? Oh, yes. Voluntary ignorance. We use a language that we are totally ignorant of the meanings of its words. This exists where a party might, by taking reasonable pains. Pain is what you're talking about. All that research you do, all the reading and watching and everything you try to learn, that's called pain. Okay?
But it's enlightening.
Well, sure.
I find it enlightening.
But that's why everybody is ignorant, because voluntarily nobody wants to go through pain. We set up the system so we don't have to go through pain, right? But what does it say? The party might, by taking reasonable pains, have acquired the necessary knowledge, but has neglected to do so. This is why the Bible is totally not understood, because they throw churches out there to mislead people. This is why the law is totally misunderstood, because they developed an education system to totally train you like animals and put you into work, because you're slaves.
Yep. I was a teacher, not anymore.
Nobody's doing the pain. No one's going through the pain to learn these things, because why would you? The system is set up to be easy. It's easy to go get a job and to go to school and learn a bunch of, pardon my French, bullshit, and take upon yourself, again, a person, a flattering title. You take an oath, you sign a contract, you do all these things that the Bible tells you not to do. People think the Bible is some religious story what it is that it's that thing that tells you how to act. Right? Everybody claims to be Christian, and no one acts like a Christian because they're not doing anything.
Nobody reads the Bible, really.
Nope, they're doing everything the Bible tells them not to do. They are doing on a daily basis.
And they also bring it up when it's convenient for them. Like when you ask them a question and they can't answer for themselves, they're like, well, the Bible says, like it's funny.
Sure. Yeah, well, and that's because, okay, so there's a perfect example of easy. It's very easy to take those wonderful quotes that are taken out of the Bible, right, that are totally out of context, right, and say, yeah, I've read the Bible because I remember this Bible quote. I have no idea what it's actually saying. I've never gone back and looked up each word to see what it actually means, right? I've never gone and one of my favorites is circumcision. Circumcision has absolutely nothing to do with the penis. Nothing. The word foreskin, as they transliterated it purposefully to confuse people, word foreskin just means a figurative skin that is over the ears and the heart so that you cannot hear God's word. That's what it means. The word anything that's circum, and in this case circumcision, literally means to cut yourself off from everybody else who is voluntarily ignorant. Find your people, find those who will act according to their beliefs and not just believe without acting, as the freedom of religion is defined, and that's what circumcision means. It's literally telling you to circumcise yourself or separate yourself from quote unquote society, from the public, from that which is governed by quote unquote the adversary, Satan. That's what it's actually telling you in the Bible. But the Jew came along and made a barbaric custom out of it to take people's notion away from them that they should separate themselves from the Jew. Yeah.
So what you're saying is that it's not easy. There isn't any kind of easy route that everybody is sort of looking for. Because what I found, I don't know if you guys could agree with me on this, but I think I've read both your works, and I think you probably would, is that it is painful because then once you sort of recognize your own complicity and your own willingness and your own volunteerism, you have to introspect. Yeah. And that can be very hard and painful. You have to relive trauma. You have to go through all this stuff. And so when people are kind of putting it off, they just don't want to feel that pain, and it is painful. And then for us on the outside, it's painful to see people go through it and not willing to listen to it. I had a friend, a lady who would come by and watch Aiden once in a while, and she has a small daughter, and she was going to get her daughter vaccinated. And I said, why? She said, because we're going to Vegas. I said, it's not rampant with disease in Vegas. You don't have to do that. And I'm trying to, plead to her, and she says, well, if she's going to become autistic, it's in God's hands. I said, if you believe in God, then it's opposed to a belief in vaccination, because then you would believe that your Creator gave you this immune system, but it's painful because you have to let those people let it go.
And plus she knows because she's worked with autistic children, so it's not like she's oblivious to the fact, No,
I know, but it hurt me because I was.
If you were to go and look at the Bible and knowing what's in vaccines and knowing the purpose of vaccines takes a lot of pain. It takes a lot of time to learn and understand. But if you go and read the Bible, if you say it's in God's hands, well, you better read what quote unquote God tells you, and it tells you not to mix species. It tells you not to shoot cow blood or human aborted fetal tissue into your body. It tells you not to do any of that stuff. So if you're going to claim that it's in God's hands and God, quote unquote, and keep in mind, when we say the Word of God, we're only saying what is absolutely obvious and self-evident, right? Everybody knows what's right. Everybody knows what's wrong. To varying degrees, we act upon that emotion. That is the self-evident, quote-unquote, truth that we talk about when we talk about God's Word, right? We can't let what the church tells us or espouses to us that God is an actual man that is watching our. No, we have to understand that this is purely a reason. It's the Bible is absolutely reasonable and logical. It tells you, hey, you idiot, if you mix species, if you create chimeras, if you do what we're doing, Monsanto is doing, and I mean, to give you an example, way back, even pre-biblical times, even the grafting of fruit trees was considered a bad thing. And you can't get a fruit tree anymore that's not grafted. You're mixing species. You're literally putting together the very structure of something. Well, you cannot get a vaccine today, period, end of story, without some animal, human, bug, plant, or whatever DNA being injected into your body. So if you're going to claim that you're a man of God, or the God's in God's hands, and God is telling you not to do that, well, then you're an idiot. And that's the
Right, and she said, well, she knows people on both sides of the coin, some who had researched and decided not to vaccinate, and others who'd researched and they decided to do it. And I'm going, you realize that this is what I do, right? Like, you realize I've done thousands of hours on this, so you're talking to someone who's done the research. But I've also had personal experience, and but I could see that it was painful because she was afraid, and I didn't know, I don't know.
By the way,
it was out of my hands.
By the way, those people that claim to do research and they still decide to vaccinate, they're full of shit.
No, they
just quack watch, and then they like, Andrew Wakefield was a fraud, and Jenny McCarthy told them to do it, and I'm going to vaccinate. That's probably all they did.
No, I know.
You know what I mean? Like, really?
No.
Really? Like, I went through the same thing with my cousin, so I was like, ridiculous. All right, it's painful because I'm just like, sorry for your baby's brain. I mean, I tried to tell you, but hey.
Well, this is the aspect here, again, of separating yourself from these people. We have been predictively programmed. We've been trained through the Alex Jones model and anybody else out there that says we can change the entire society. It's not our society. It's not our corporation. It's not our public. Okay, we have to escape from that public entity, that public thing, if we want to ever actually, again, act upon our own beliefs, our own religion, or our own law. We have to separate ourselves from that. There is no curing this society, and as you guys must know by now, these vaccines have literally altered people's brains, have literally altered people's. We have epigenetic, behavioral epigenetics now, where you can inject the mother, and the baby is going to pick up the traits that they want you to pick. That we're beyond fixing anything at this point. The thing that you have to do, and that we are trying to do, is to gather, to gather together people of the like mind, and let's face it, you guys do not have like minds with the rest of society, do you? And you're gonna spend a lot of time trying to. And I understand the will, and I understand because that's how I started out. I wanted to help everybody. I wanted to change everybody's opinion so that everybody would come down and. But we're talking about a corporation. We're talking about something that's artificial in the first place. We're talking about everybody participating in fraud, and most people at this point are so damaged, so vaccine and other medical scientific methods are so damaged that there is no turning back. It's like an experiment, a petri dish that's overgrown. There is no You must find like-minded people. You must be able to act upon your own conscience, and you're never going to be able to do that in this society. It's not set up for that.
Right.
Yeah.
So look, Bible says the path is narrow, and it's a very true statement. Look for like-minded people. Stop trying to save the world. The world basically is about to be flooded again, in my opinion. There's a depopulation campaign. The United States, the white population in the United States is declining dramatically, while the only reason we have a population increase is because of foreigners coming into this country. We are being depopulated. We just don't see it.
No, I know it's true because, and the babies are dying. We have a really high infant mortality rate, and all this, and I mean, not just. I mean, to add to what you're saying, I mean, my last essay I was writing about the emotional trauma. It's like the act of vaccination really separates the child from the parents in a bond of trust, because you're watching your child being raped or something likened to that in front of your eyes, but condoning it. Saying it's okay, you'll be all right, while they're crying and looking at you, saying, please, this hurts, I don't want this. But we're conditioned because that's what happened to us, and we just went, well, I guess that's just how it goes, because life is pain. So this is part of the conditioning, is that we have to go through some sort of painful experience in order to be a part of life.
Have you had Janice on your show?
She's
yeah, we're getting her in 2 weeks. We're so excited.
Yeah. Yeah, she's booked for our show, but so not yet, but she's going to be on in a couple of weeks. So
You're absolutely right, and the fact that you're, I should bring up these quotes, but just off the top of my head, when you read Aldous Huxley, when you read Rudolf Steiner, when you read all these people who predicted that one day vaccinations will be able to epigenetically. Now I understand what they were alluding to. You can switch off the expression for anything you want in the human body. Okay, so what they said is that they'll be able to basically turn off empathy and turn off the religious notion, which means that you won't be able to comprehend the notion of what we've been talking about with the God. You won't be able to get past the social brainwashing against God, because it's the only way their system can exist, is if everybody's against what the Bible actually says, not what the church says. So the fact that you feel that empathy and you can still understand the fact that baby must be looking at you going, what the hell, why aren't you protecting me? I'm so confused right now. It makes you cry to think about the fact that you went through that and they went through that, okay? That is proof to me that you have not been damaged, or that you haven't gone through you haven't had the right vaccine to take that away from you, to make you in a permanent state of cognitive dissonance, etc. Again, how many people do you know that are like you? You need to seek out and find like-minded individuals, because I'm telling you, this is not a case anymore of trying to educate or wake up or all of that crap that you hear. This is a case now of finding people who have not been damaged.
Yeah, and it's about survival, and just taking, those of us who do have my dream or my goal is that we will sort of build our own community away from this thing, and get back into nature, and teaching our children, the ones who have vaccine damaged even can learn things like gardening, or how to milk a cow, or how to, build self-sustaining, so that they're not going to just be assigned whatever position that they are given as the Delta worker, or, your grocery bagger at Vaughn's, what have you. They're going to, and that they'll be able to know how to make their own food and how to do these types of things, so that they're not dependent upon that. But for the rest of us too, because if you've grown up in the city or the suburbs, we don't know how to do a lot of that stuff. We had to learn that. I had to learn that stuff as adults. I grew up in the city, so just within the last few years, am I learning how to have a garden and things like that.
Well, that's the purpose of cities.
Yeah.
Literally, that's the purpose of peopling farms like that, is to take people away from nature, away from a deep understanding, again, of God, of Jehovah, of what is all that is the permanent being.
As a teacher, I just want to say this one last thing and add on to this because we got to wrap up. But I took when I was teaching, I don't anymore, but I took some walnuts and their shells to some of my students, and they were like, they looked at me like I brought something from outer space. They had no idea. They were just like, and I brought a nutcracker and they cracked, and they loved it, but they're just like, they just thought that they came in bags at the store.
Yeah.
They didn't know
That's
about
cool.
I want you to imagine what the future is going to be like. If you really want to see what the future is going to be like, look up 3D printing for food.
Oh, hell no. I've seen 3D printing. I've seen 3D printing for food? Are you fucking kidding me?
Go do a search. Go do a search. You're going to be shocked.
I can't. Yeah, that's just too much.
Oh my
Well, no,
God.
it's happening right now. How do you think your food's
I
being
believe
produced?
you.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If you don't know the source of your food, it's, again, and I don't mean to be religious at all, I'm saying you don't know God. You don't know what the source of your food is. It means you're not working the earth. It means you're not, it means, you know, there's a term, I can't remember what it is, but it points to people who have land and don't work the land, and it's basically citizenship. It's basically what we're talking about today. Anybody who is on land and doesn't work the land is considered as basically the lowest of low. Is how they is the hierarchy. So if you are not working the land, if you don't know the source of your own food, then you pretty much know that you're screwed. Right? I mean, the fact that those kids don't know what a walnut shell looks like proves to me, above all else, that because, I mean, in my opinion, that is slavery. When you take away that kind of knowledge, then that is mind control. That is absolute control, if you ask me.
Because they would have no choice if it came to the point where they couldn't go to the store and get a shelled walnut. What would they do? If you gave them something like that, would they think it was a rock? I mean, you know, it's so yeah, it's total enslavement if you can't identify what food looks like in your environment and just walk around and say this is edible, you know, and pluck it. Here in Southern California, rosemary grows everywhere. Don't ever buy rosemary because it grows natural. You just clip it and, you know, throw that on your food. Whatever. So it's yeah, I would agree with your statement. So, but we are out of time. As always, it's so lovely and great to have you on our show, Clint. So please remind our audience when your show airs on RBN. It's nightly, right? Monday through Friday?
Monday through Friday. It's, that's 4 to 6 p.m. in the Pacific, which is 7 to 9 Eastern. And, yeah, Monday through Friday. We're going to have Jan Irvin on Monday, actually, talking about his new paper, which is fantastic. He's been exposing just about everybody in his life at this point.
Oh, fantastic.
So, good times. I also have a new website, but I haven't built the site yet, because this book has been taking all my time, and I needed a website. It's strawmanstory.info, just for in case anybody's actually interested in this whole project I've been working on for years now. Strawmanstory.info, and yeah, and it's republicbroadcasting.org for the show. And you know, I'll be honest with you, Republic is one of the last standing networks. It's I'm not sure how much longer it's going to be around, because it's one of the last dying models of that old commercial radio type of model, and it's the only alternative station practically left, except for, you know, things like InfoWars, which are there to deceive. So I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to, you know, continue in this capacity of broadcasting on there, and nobody's paid there, and nobody's, you know, everybody's doing it because they want to be there, as opposed to, you know, I did a show with Joyce Riley. She says, yeah, I have to pay $30,000 a month to be on this station. Jones has to pay, like, I don't know, $50,000-$60,000 to keep his show on the air, and we're sitting there doing it for free, like you guys.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. We don't get paid.
Yeah.
Not in monetary value.
Yeah, well, so it's funny because when the notion of something that is free is presented to somebody, for some reason they say, well, that can't be legitimate, or that can't be.
Yeah.
It's so odd. People look for a price tag. If there's no price tag, they won't have anything to do with it.
It's so true.
It's so crazy.
Definitely. So, all right, Clint, it's great as always, and you're certainly welcome back anytime. So, everybody stay with us. We're going to close out the show after a quick break. So, please stay tuned, and have a great rest of the day, Clint.
All right, guys, take care.
Bye, Clint. I'm back.
Hello, thanks for having me on your radio. Even though we're not from a famous rock and roll band, if we were, even though we sound a little like we are, we'd definitely wear a Conspiracy Realist t-shirt, because they're gear, aren't they? Oh yeah, they're really gear. I want to write a song about them. Conspiracy Realist t-shirts at truthatease.com. I gotta think of the middle eight. Shop.truthatease.com. What does that mean? It's the internet. What's that? I don't know. It's a net. It's between things. Shop.truthatease.com. What's that? It's where you get Conspiracy Realist t-shirts. Oh, gear.
Hey, welcome back to Truth or Talk. Thanks for hanging with us. We just interviewed Clint Richardson.
Clint Dog.
Clint Dog.
Clint Dog.
Clint Dog.
They're called Clint Richardson. We're called Clint Dog.
That's Clint Dog. He's Clint Richardson of the Corporation Nation at Republic Broadcasting Network. He said that RBN might not last much longer. That'd be a real shame.
Wait, what?
The network that he's on, RBN.
Oh. Huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah. He mentioned that during the show. I don't know.
That's I know he can get another show somewhere.
Well, he can, but it's just a shame if the whole thing goes under, because, they have RBN host Robert Scott Bell, and, he's also hosted on the Natural News, but a couple other, but I think one of his days he works there at RBN, and I forget, there's quite a few other really talented people that run shows there, so it'd just be a shame, just to lose a good one, but he mentioned that during the show, so hopefully that's not the case.
Yeah.
But you guys can find him there for now, and then he's at, his blog is called realityblogger.wordpress.com and Corporation Nation. So that's where Clint Dog's at. So he's always good to talk to. He's always somebody that we have on, and we're like, okay, we're going to talk about this, this, and this, and then we get to one of the subjects.
Yeah. Because he knows.
I know, it's just it's such a vast subject, that, and then he knows so much, he's done so much research on it, that it's you never get to talk about the other things. So then we're always like, okay, well, I guess we have to have Clint back on,
I was going to say that I just, I wish that a lot of these people that we have on, I had for professors in college.
Right, it's true.
No doubt, it would have been a much more enriching and interesting experience. Even though I did have some cool teachers in college, I'm not downing the ones that were cool, okay, but I'm just saying, just the information and the subject matter that they talk about is just so intriguing and empowering and enlightening and edifying, and
Yeah,
interesting.
And Clint's very generous with his information and knowledge. He's not trying to hoard anything away, away from people. He gives most of it away, or all of it away, for free. I don't think anything he charges for. But he is working on a book, I believe, and hopefully he'll charge for that at least. Make a little money. Make a little something there. But so he's very giving with his information and his knowledge, and I wished I had some of that information, because I wouldn't have put any of my kids under birth certificates. I would have just kept them all off of the grid.
Well, any future children I have, they're not doing any of this stuff. They're not having a natural birth. They're not getting vaccinated. They're not getting birthed. Thank you. I appreciate, just being exposed to this information, because I know you've definitely saved me from and Clint and other people you've had on. You've definitely saved me from having to go through all that. I'm gonna have a fun birth. I'm gonna have a birth in a pool of water or some shit. Like an orgasm birth. I'm gonna have it off the grid. What?
Yeah, exactly. Go off the grid. Just have it, out.
I'll just have it in a lake.
Or a natural spring, one of those ones.
Oh, that's better. Like a hot spring, like a warm.
Exactly. That would be a great place, because naturally mineralized and everything. You'll be like bringing a baby into the world just all naturally.
Oh yeah.
And then it'll also be helpful with the pain of the contractions and whatnot.
Yep.
So that'd be awesome. So, and then you can, on top of that, know that you're not ever going to have to give them a birth certificate or a social security number. The mark of the beast.
I know. The no mark of the beast. It'd be the mom. It'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
I have a free baby.
Mm-hmm. a free man or woman, or I guess woman. He said is not a real word, or it's a legal term. But so a free man you would have, whether it's male or female. So so that's Clint Dog Richardson. So check him out at Corporation Nation, or The Corporation Nation, and reality blogger RBN, Republic Broadcast Network. I think a lot of our listeners listen to Clint too. So good talk with him, and I'm sure we'll have him back on eventually because Lord knows there's more to talk about. So so y'all, we're out of time, but thank you for listening, and until next time, peace, truth, and love.
Peace, truth, and love, you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Ah, the government. It loves you and wants to keep you safe and well. It even wants to make paying taxes, fines, and court costs easier for you. How? Well, you'll need to meet your straw man. He was born the same day you were. He looks like you, has the same name, and lives in your house, but you never knew he existed. You will have even paid his parking tickets or taxes. The worst part? He's been dead from day one. From every birth certificate, a legal personality, or legal fiction, is created with the same name to confuse little old you into thinking it's you. So, there is a human you and a paper you, or as it's commonly known, a straw man. So when it seems like government officials, court clerks, or the police are speaking English, they aren't. They're speaking legalese, designed to make you agree to verbal and written contracts without even knowing about it, all spun from Black's Law Dictionary. For example, when the police say, "Do you understand?" you'll say, "Yes." What they are really saying is, "Do you stand under our authority?" Oops-a-daisy, you just created a verbal contract with them. Oh, you clever government. Did you know that whenever you register something, you are handing over title to the person you register it with? That's right. Whenever you register something with the government, they assume it belongs to them. Registered your car? Super! Now you are the registered keeper of your vehicle, and the government can crush it when you don't pay your, straw man's taxes. Expecting a new bundle of joy? Well then you need to register your little darling with a birth certificate. Then they can start the process all over again and create a new straw man for your little one. Isn't that great? So when Junior grows up, he'll be able to generate revenue just like you have. When you notify on your baby by signing the birth certificate, your child becomes a ward of state, and if the government doesn't like what you're doing, they'll assume it's okay to take the child away, or make new rules for things they don't like. Not enough school? Smacking your child? Shouting too loudly? Then it's off to social services for the little one. When you get a bill, it's sent to you, but belongs to your straw man, not you. That's why bills, fines, and summons start with Mr., Mrs., or Ms. Sometimes you'll see your surname in capitals, just like on a gravestone. That's because your straw man is dead, and just a silly piece of paper, created before you could comprehend or even consent to it. When you go to court, you represent your straw man, so you, the human, take on any costs, fees, taxes, and fines involved for the straw man. The human you doesn't even need to pay them. But you made a contract with the court by appearing on behalf of your legal personality or straw man, just like the government knew you would. Confused? Well, don't worry. The government doesn't want you to know anyway. If you knew, you'd stop paying things like council tax and parking tickets. Because when you go to court, you are representing your straw man. You are you, alive and made of flesh and blood. Your straw man, or legal personality, is a piece of paper created from your birth certificate. and you think it's you. What a silly Billy. Would you like to know more? Well, then go over to tpuc.org. Get up, get informed, and get real.
Thank you.